Morning. Well, today is the day after I did the fillets on the forward bulkhead and the nesting bulkhead, and I used a different mix for the fillet on the nesting bulkhead. So rather than describe it, I'll just show you. So on the forward bulkhead I used the standard mix, which was to use the colloidal silica as the thickening agent. And as you can see, there was a bit of a gap here, about 6 or 7 mils of, and perhaps a little bit on the other side where the floor panels have curved, so they're touching at the corners, and this side is touching mostly, but the bottom part was curved, and because it fits so well apart from that bit, I thought I would just use the filler to fill that in. But as you can kind of see, I don't know if you can quite see, but it's run a little bit, so it's all a little bit kind of runny and a bit melty. It looks like it's melted somehow, and it's set now, which is fine. So that's fine. But yesterday I kept having to go over it and push it back into position, and as it got slowly harder and harder, and as it was going off, it was harder and harder to move it, and so I thought it would be fine, but it still managed to run a little bit more. It's like a glacier. It's just slowly slithering down the hill and coming out of the join. So it hasn't been particularly successful, so there's going to be a lot of sanding there, and I'm going to have to probably fill over that again. But on the forward side, where I've put in the reinforcing panels for the lifting bolts, that looks like it's gone quite well. There's a tiny little bit of run there, where it's just run a little bit from that, because I put quite a lot into that corner. But the rest of it doesn't look too bad. I think that's a reasonable fillet there, reasonable curve. That looks quite good. There's a bit of paper or something there. The rest of it looks quite good. Yeah, quite fairly pleased with that. That looks quite good. That needs to be sanded back though before I can put any fiberglass over it. So I'm going to fiberglass all down this join, and I'll probably do this join as well. So that's going to need a fillet as well. And I think that was going to be a really strong. So this was only like 1/4 inch ply, whereas this now is 3/4 inch ply. So I feel happy putting bolts through that. I'm going to put a lifting eye on the forward bulkhead, about one probably about here, and then one about here, and so the load from those bolts will get transmitted all the way down into the hull. So I think that's quite good. So the thing I'm disappointed with is the fact that how much of that's run. Okay, so if we now look at the nesting bulkhead for this one, I did the same thing, but rather than keep going with the colloidal silica until it got to the right required thickness and consistency, I started adding some sawdust. So there's a sawdust that I collected while I was cutting the original panels out. So the sawdust is from this wood when I was cutting it. So I probably use about half of that tub, and it's produced. It felt a little bit like raspberry jam when I was applying it, and it's got quite a coarse texture now, but it hasn't run at all. It hasn't run at all, so that has held together much better than the colloidal silica. So this side of the nesting bulkhead is now done. It's going to need sanding, but it's done all the way across. I started off on the other side with some resin I had left over, and I finished it off. On this side, I ran out. I just needed probably another 20 millimeters, and I would have managed to fill it the lot. But I ran out towards the end, and rather than mix any more, it was 6:30. I was getting tired. I decided to knock it on the head, call it a day. So I've still got to do a bit more to do today, this morning. But the first job today is going to be sanding. I've got to sand down all of these splotches of, all along the chines here and all along the keel. I've put in splotches of epoxy to act as a binder so that I can take these wires out. But rather than take the wires out now, I'm going to sand first, because sanding will cause a bit of rocking. So I'll sand first and then I'll take the wires out. Alright, that's the plan for today. I just thought I would show you sanding down one of these spot welds. They only take a couple of minutes each, but there's quite a lot of them, so I'll just show you one to see so you can see how it goes. There you go. Most of the work is in getting rid of the bits that didn't actually go into the weld. You know, the mess that you make, the mess that I made. So the tip here really is to be as tidy and neat as possible and scrape away anything. Just do a thin smear and scrape away any excess before it cures, because once it cures, it's a lot of work to sand it all down. All this residue in the bottom of the boat now. I guess these are going to be ready for the next glassing though, which is for the filleting. So once I take the wires out, these can now be filleted. So that's later on this morning. Wires out, filleting. Okay, I've had a slight change of plan. The fillets on the nesting bulkheads, and especially the fillets on the forward bulkhead, aren't really dry enough to sand. So I've decided that instead of putting on the epoxy and filleting those ready for glassing today, I'm just going to remove the wires and fillet the remaining part of the nesting bulkhead and the chines and the keel today, and then that's going to be it. And I'll then just leave it to dry for a couple of days, and the next stage will be to come back and put the glass tape along the seams and the nesting bulkheads and the forward bulkhead and the transom. So that's quite a lot of taping to do, so there's no real way I would have done that today, or even half of it. And the nesting bulkheads, this part here needs 6 layers, so that's 6 layers either side, so that's quite an awful lot of taping. So that is going to take quite a while. So it's almost lunchtime, so I'm just going to take the wires out and fingers crossed it stays together. So basically, how we take the wires out is a pair of snips. Just snip all the wires, and we take them out with the pliers. So that one's out. That one's out. Out. to leave these spot welds for 2 days just to make sure they're completely gone off. So I didn't want them to be not done. Anyway, I'm going to put this into time lapse. Okay, so I've just finished putting in the fillets down the chines. So earlier I took out the wires from the chines, but I left the ones in the keel because I haven't glassed up the nesting bulkheads yet, and I was worried that if I do, there's nothing really holding the whole together down the centre line. So although the nesting bulkhead is kind of glassed at the edges, it's not, there's no tape, it's not fiberglassed, it's not fully fiberglassed in yet, it's just got the fillets at the side. So would the fillets really be strong enough to hold the whole together if it was trying to pop apart? So I decided to wait until the keel once that's all fiberglassed up. But I did go ahead and fillet the chines, so they're all done, and the transom. So got the transom on the sides, the transom on the floor, the sides on the floor. So all of this back section is now filleted. All of the front part of the dinghy is now filleted. Oh, apart from the forward bulkhead, because there was a bit of running on the colloidal silica-based glue, I'm going to have to just go over that again. And I thought about doing it just now, but I don't think I've got quite enough. And it probably needs a better sand than I've given it, so I think I'll just wait. And I have also filleted the keel between the stem and the forward bulkhead. So that forward section is starting to look quite good now. I've still left on the blocks holding those bits together. Don't want any more accidents with that. So the next step, really, apart from putting the fillets on the forward bulkhead, would be putting the glass tape onto the forward bulkhead. I could go ahead and cut the tape. Otherwise, I think it's just a question of waiting for this to cure, sanding it down, and putting the tapes in. So perhaps cutting the tapes is not a bad thing to do next.